Hello and welcome to Times Aerospace TV's first monthly defence update for the emerging markets of Africa, the Middle East and West Asia. The programme is brought to you thanks to the support of our sponsors, the World Defence Show. Well, our specialist defence team from Times Aerospace magazines across the regions will be looking at the news and also giving their own take and input on the announcements or the speculation. Now, I'm joined here this week in the studio by our legendary defence editor, Jon Lake, who is twice winner of the Defence Journalist of the Year in the Global Aerospace Awards and is the former editor of the World Air Power Journal. He's got 37 years of defence journalism behind him and has written more than 40 odd books. Well, he puts me to shame. And from Central Europe today, but shortly heading off to Abu Dhabi to prepare for IDEX, is Alan Warnes, who was 13 years the editor of Air Forces Monthly before joining our team. And from New Delhi, Jay Menon, who has covered the defence beat for GBP at air shows in Asia and the Middle East, and has been a regular contributor for Aviation Week. Well, you'll be meeting other members of our team as well in future programmes. Now, of course, it's not just Alan Warnes who'll be heading off to Abu Dhabi in February, when the defence's largest event in the region, IDEX, kicks off for February the 21st. Our UAE editor, Jill Stockbridge, reports.
Thanks, Alan. Well, since the lockdown started almost a year ago, defence and aviation shows from around the world have been cancelled. But here in the UAE, the country's Ministry of Defence and General Command of the Armed Forces have been working together to ensure COVID-safe protocols are in place and that the biannual IDEX and NAVDEX exhibition and conference will go ahead. On 21st of February, all roads lead to Abu Dhabi, where visitors and exhibitors will gather. Organisers say that in addition to many official delegations, experts, specialists and decision makers from across the defence sector will be here for the event. A number of warships are also currently making their way up the Gulf, heading towards their moorings alongside the Abu Dhabi National Exhibition Centre. The growing importance of the defence industry to local economies in manufacturing terms will be apparent. The Gulf states have been investing in their indigenous industries, and we fully expect to see the UAE's own edge, demonstrating artificial intelligence and relentless innovation in their autonomous products. It's great to be back in show business.
Well, the UK is one nation that can't wait to get out there. 50% of the UK's defence export goes to the Gulf region. And earlier, I spoke to Mark Goldsack, the head of the UK's defence exports, about just why IDEX is so important for Britain.
The fact that it is going ahead, the fact that we are able to look forward to what I think will be a really exciting show, is a testament to two things, I think. First of all, is the resilience of this sector of industry, which has been determined to work through the challenges that we've seen and find that curiously hybrid mixture of solutions to not being able to mix in the traditional manner. But the most important thing is that we're taking a show that's always been a very significant part of the global stage as far as this sector is concerned. And we'll be picking up on it at a moment when it's never mattered more to the global supply chain to be able to talk to each other, understand where each other sits at the moment in terms of the impact of COVID, of budgets, of the various global challenges that we see, and then to talk to each other about solutions. And of course, the GCC are a key part of that. So they are central. And you've seen, I think, from just the public speeches that have occurred, the visits that have occurred over the past 12 to 18 months, just how determined the British government is to make sure that we do stay very close to our closest friends and allies around the world. The GCC is part of that network. It's a really key part of it for us. We are strategic partners.
Well, you can hear a lot more from Mark Goldsack in our special Insight report, which will be out on Tuesday. In that interview, he outlines the UK's approach to meeting Vision 2030 plans for partnership and military industrialisation. Now, one aircraft that has been in the news as far as the Middle East is concerned is the Lockheed Martin F-35, which was selected by the UAE and was a last-minute contract signing as President Trump left office. Well, let's go to Jay Menon, who's been monitoring the situation.
Well, thanks, Alan. The UAE is waiting anxiously, or rather eagerly, to hear whether the contract for the F-35 fighter signed on the final day of Donald Trump's presidency and supported by the Israeli government will be honored by the new Biden administration. UAE on January 20th had signed off on a deal to purchase up to 50 F-35 Joint Strike Fighter aircraft and 18 MQ-9 Reaper drones from the United States. It all happened after the UAE and Israel announced that they would normalize relations back in August 2020, and particularly since they signed the Abraham Accords. And moreover, after the United States assured Israel that they will have the qualitative military edge in the region. As it stands, UAE is poised to become the first Arab state to acquire the F-35 fighter aircraft from the United States. And there were a lot of doubts before the deal, but the Biden administration has yet to signal that it has any plans to reverse the deal.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Well, as Jay says, it's anxious moments. What we know is Joe Biden's administration has decided to review the decision. But when and if the US government will make a firm decision is unknown. Importantly, though, let's not panic. It's worth remembering that arms sales are usually subject to review if there's a change of administration, a point that was made clear on Wednesday evening by US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. It was also supported by the UAE ambassador to Washington, Yusuf Al-Otaiba. He told us that the UAE understands perfectly the idea of the review, but has taken the opportunity to remind the US that now is the time to allow the UAE to maintain a strong deterrent to aggression. In parallel with new dialogue and security cooperation, it helps to reassure regional partners, he said. And although Israel has supported the bid, there's a strong lobby in the States against the sale. So, John, what's your view?
The key thing on this is I don't personally think that the UAE are going to be allowed to acquire the F-35 at this point in time. There's simply too much opposition from certain lobby groups in the US. If they do get it, then the floodgates will be opened. It will be just like when Bahrain got AMRAAM. Once a new game-changing capability is introduced into the region, inevitably there will be proliferation. And there's no way on earth that the Saudis, particularly the Saudis, won't also want that kind of penetrating, stealthy capability.
Well, meanwhile, Qatar has been strengthening its fleet. And John, you can tell us the story on that.
I've never seen an expansion like this. The incredible expansion program that the Qatar Emiri Air Force is currently undertaking has been probably the most dramatic procurement I've seen in the 36 years that I've been writing about military aviation. Qatar operated what was once one of the smallest air arms in MENA, with a frontline strength of just 12 Mirage 2000 air defence fighters, and these were augmented by a handful of Alpha jets used for close air support. The current expansion will see the eventual acquisition of 96 top-of-the-line multi-role fighters, F-15s from Boeing, Eurofighter Typhoons from the UK. That's a tremendous boost in capability on an individual aircraft level, and it's an 8-fold increase in frontline strength. At the end of December, Qatari Rafales began air-to-air refuelling operations with US Air Force KC-135 Stratotankers. Now that was the first ever joint US-Qatari in-flight refuelling mission that was mounted over Qatar. It's been an interesting decade. 10 years back, Qatar was one of a number of GC states that adopted a more robust foreign policy and a much more international outlook, perhaps partly in response to the US Obama administration's pivot to the Pacific. This led to a US expectation that its Gulf allies would shoulder a greater share of their own defence. In Qatar, There was an aspiration for a larger, more impressive air force, and one that had expeditionary capabilities and that would be able to take part in US or NATO-led coalition operations in a much more meaningful way. In 2011, it became the first Arab state to join Odyssey Dawn, the Allied effort to stop the bloodshed in Libya. Qatar dispatched 6 of its Mirage 2000s to the airbase in Crete, from where they flew alongside French Mirage 2000s on combat air patrols to enforce the NATO-led no-fly zone over Libya. Now, even before this, Qatar had already started assessing potential replacement for these Mirage 2000-5s. It evaluated the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II and the Boeing F/A-18EF Super Hornet, as well as the 3 aircraft types that it actually went on to purchase: the Eurofighter Typhoon, the then McDonnell Douglas, now Boeing F-15E Strike Eagle, and the Dassault Rafale. In May 2015, Qatar signed a $7.7 billion Memorandum of Understanding for 24 Rafales, 18 single-seaters and 6 two-seaters from Dassault. Now, Dassault formally handed the first of these aircraft over to Qatar in a ceremony at Mérignac, southwest France, where the aircraft are built just about 2 years ago next week. Qatari pilots continued to train on the new type in France before the first 5 Rafales were delivered in June 2019, and by February 2020 there were 23 aircraft in country, 5 two-seaters and 18 single-seaters. The replacement of 12 ageing Mirages by the Rafales would have been a major boost to any air force, but 12 more Rafales are due to be delivered by the end of 2022, and 2 further fighter aircraft types are due to be introduced in the form of the Boeing F-15QA Advanced Eagle and the latest version of the Eurofighter Typhoon.
Thanks, John. Well, now, guys, I'd like to look at India. There was celebration in the defence industry in India this month with HAL, that's Hindustan Aeronautics, at long last getting the green light for the country's first indigenous fighter jet. Jay Menon is in Delhi. So, Jay, this is good news, right?
As you rightly said, finally, it has been done. In a boost to India's fledgling domestic aerospace system, the country's Cabinet Committee on Security early this year cleared a $6.7 billion deal for 83 light combat aircraft, Tejas Mark 1A. This will, to a certain extent, greatly help stem the fast depleting number of fighter squadrons in the beleaguered Indian Air Force. And signing of the contract for the aircraft remains to be done, but the first Tejas Mark 1A is expected to be delivered 36 months after signing the contract. But however, our sources have indicated that all 83 jets, which include 10 Mark 1 trainers, are slated for delivery in January 2024, December 2028 timeframe.
Do you think the government is right behind it now?
That's right. As the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh rightly pointed out, the deal will be a game changer for self-reliance in India and would act as a catalyst for transforming the domestic aerospace ecosystem in the country.
Okay, thanks, Jay. Alan warns, does this change the dynamics in the region? And what's the thinking about the Tejas? How good is it?
Well, it's not before time that the Indian government has shown this support for the programme. I remember seeing the LCA at Bangalore in 2001, just after its first flight. It's been a long haul since then, with the aircraft plagued by so many faults. But I do take my hat off to the Indian government in persevering an aircraft that started its development in the early 80s.
Thanks, Alan. So, John, let me come to you. Jay said that this order for 80 aircraft to arrive by 2028 will stem the fast depleting number of fighter squadrons in India. Is this enough? And what should the Indian government be doing?
It's not enough. They are retiring older aircraft types at a rate of knots, and they are far short of the target strength of squadrons. And then last year they retired the last of the MiG-27s. The MiG-21 Bisons are looking embarrassingly old, and there's already a shortfall. And while the induction of new TAS aircraft will help to fill the gap. It will leave India short of its target, and crucially short at a time when, with China breathing down India's neck on that frontier, they actually need a lot more, and particularly aircraft that can operate from those hot and high bases in the mountains up on that frontier. Almost certainly the Indians will need to embark on another major procurement. Now, they have things planned, but the pace of military aircraft procurements in India have traditionally been glacially slow.
Well, with all the new aircraft coming through, training's taken on a new impetus. Alan Warnes has been working through the lockdown on a new special report for the whole MENA region. Alan.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time researching the subject in recent months. So in the first part of the report, I look at the training platforms and simulation options available out there. But in the second, review how the Air Force are being modernised. I talked to many aerospace companies working in the region and retired many military personnel too, with my focus on training fighter pilots. We're set to see around 200 new combat aircraft delivered to the Middle East over the next 2 or 3 years. Even more if Saudi Arabia and UAE is expected to acquire the Lockheed Martin F-35A. In North Africa, the pace of purchasing hasn't been so hectic, although both Morocco and Tunisia have embarked on modernisation programmes. All this new fighter hardware with new cutting-edge avionics, systems and weapons are expensive, not just to purchase, but to operate as well. For example, the operational cost of flying a twin-engine fighter will be between £60,000 to £80,000 per hour. Yes, an hour. Maybe a little less for the Super Hornet F-16s and F-35s if all goes to plan. Remember too that the more you fly an aircraft, the quicker its airframe will expire, and the sooner the very expensive power plants will need to be overhauled or replaced. So rather than burn money, Air Force commanders realise that simulation and synthetics are a cheaper route to train new pilots than flying the actual aircraft. But simulators aren't just going to be involved in training just fighter pilots. They'll run through the veins of all flying training. There are some that say screening aircraft will be a thing of the past, and this could be done on a simulator. With data analytics, you can see if a student has a psyche to fly, thus shaving off more added expense, but the training possibilities are enormous. Then, of course, there is the opportunity to link simulators at all the different air bases, so interoperability can be trained, and not just to fighters. You can practice tactical training with AWACS, SIGINT, common platforms, helicopters, just as you would do during an operation. Trying to get all these flying assets together normally would be very difficult, but the sim gets around that at the same time as saving so much expense.
The report will be out with the February issue of Arabian Aerospace magazine and will also be available at IDEX. You should also be able to see it online as an ebook on the Times Aerospace websites for Africa in the Middle East. Now finally, we head back to the United States' involvement in the region and another of Donald Trump's last-minute orders that could affect East Africa. Jon.
Certainly will affect East Africa. As one of his administration's final actions, US President Donald Trump ordered the immediate withdrawal of virtually all US troops from Somalia. This follows similar efforts to reduce US forces in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and it reflects President Trump's view that US military interventions have been costly and ineffective. An unspecified number of US troops will be redeployed to neighbouring countries to allow them to continue cross-border missions. US Army General Stephen Townsend, the commander of US Africa Command, has said that America is not withdrawing or disengaging from East Africa and that it remains committed to helping its African partners to build a more secure future. We're repositioning, but we will maintain the ability to strike this enemy, he said, when US forces mounted a series of attacks against al-Shabaab compounds in early January. While American ground forces completed their withdrawal from Somalia under Operation Octave Quartz, US Air Forces flew intensive missions, showing that any attempt to disrupt the US departure or to attack the withdrawing forces would be met by overwhelming force. US Air Force aircraft already deployed to the CENTCOM region stepped up their operations, and a formidable joint task force was stationed off the coast, including the supercarrier, the USS Nimitz, and the amphibious assault ship, a kind of mini carrier, USS Makin Island, which embarks an amphibious ready group supported by US Marine Corps F-35B Joint Strike Fighters and AH-1Z Cobra attack helicopters.
Well, thanks, John. Thanks, Alan and Jay. Next week, look out for the launch of our TATV News and Current Affairs programme, where we get behind the news headlines in the aviation, aerospace and defence sectors across our geographic markets of Africa, Middle East and India. And don't forget to catch that special insight programme from the UK government's exports team next week on their future defence strategy for international collaboration. Well, thank you for watching. We'll be reporting next month with the overview of IDEX and getting the thoughts of our team of specialists. Until then, goodbye.